everybody, Questwise here. There are a lot of games out there on the market, a lot of RPGs, tabletop RPGs on the market right now. What I think is great about that is that, sort of like in the book world, there are so many different books out there for different people. So there might be a particular game or it might be a particular book that I really love that other people just don't like at all. And today I want to talk about the fact that there's such a great variety of games on the market right now, such a great variety of RPGs on the market right now, that there's sort of something that fits everyone. There's a game out there for you somewhere. But today I want to talk about the games that we collect that we want to invest more time in. So, for example, I've been playing the D20 system, obviously the D&D system, for most of my life, as well as the Palladium system from Palladium Books. That being, Heroes Unlimited and Palladium Fantasy and Rifts. And I feel that I have a pretty decent mastery of those games. I feel that of all the games I own, the D20 system is probably the one that I can honestly say I'm a master of, meaning that I could just pick it up and play at any time with very little reference to the rules. There are several other games that I own that I really, really wish I was a master of, that I could spend a little bit more time on them, and that I could divulge enough time into them that I feel that I actually have sort of a mastery of the rules. Now, it really is too much to say that I want to master all of the games that I own, and I own quite a few. But if I were to narrow it down to a few, I would say I have a mastery of the D20 system. I would really, really, really love to sort of master some of the older games that I have. Say like MERP, I think would be a fun one. Middle Earth role playing. I'll do a further video on that later because I have my sort of love-hate relationship with that game. I would love to master Call of Cthulhu 7th Edition, which I feel I have a pretty good understanding of, but I feel that there's enough nuances in that game that it would take quite a bit longer for me to sort of be a master of it, as you will. But there's one game that I've owned for a long time, and while the sort of basics of it are very simple, there's so much more involved in it. There's so much more that you can add, and so much more depth and flavor that you can add to it, that I feel that this is a game that sort of would take maybe a lifetime to master, but I'm up to the challenge. And that game is Burning Wheel. This game was created by Luke Crane, and I have to say I'm a Luke Crane fanboy. I really, really, really love this game. Now, this game comes in sort of I don't know if you'd call it a digest size. I'd like to call it a Bible size. It's very thick. It looks like a novel. It's very beautifully produced. There's 2 books currently on the market right now. There's the Burning Wheel core book, which is actually broken into books, as you can see on the spine. It's books 1 and 2. So this is considered the core book. And then there's also what just recently came out, the Burning Wheel Codex. This book is just so damn beautiful. The embossed wheels in the front and stuff here. This has a lot of other stuff. This is a huge section of commentary on the game itself, which gives you a great further depth of feel to the game, as well as a bunch of other rules and additional things like magic, and additional magic things, systems, as well as somehow how to play the game in a little bit more depth. If you're not familiar with Burning Wheel can be a very, very intense game. While I like a game that can be very simple, I really do like sort of OSR type games, especially like the D20 system stuff, because I know it well enough. I feel that I like those games because it's easy to teach to people. I also like that because it's easy to run, at least in my experience. I feel like that I could pick up any of those games with a quick flip through. I could instantly run an adventure for you, and we could create a wonderful story together. I believe that Burning Wheel has the potential to tell some much, much deeper, much more amazing stories. But getting there is climbing the mountain. The learning curve on this game is fairly steep. Like I said, the basic mechanic of it is very simple. It's a D6 system. You're adding some bonuses and some stats together. You're adding those dice together. You're rolling the dice, and at the beginning, at least, you're looking for 4, 5, 6s are successes, and your obstacles are numbers like an obstacle of 2. It means you need 2 successes to overcome the obstacle or complete the task. While that all sounds simple, it does get deeper and deeper. You can play the entire game that way. That's fine. It's like I said, a very simple, intuitive system. But there are times when you want to the game lets you sort of super focus in on certain points of the action. So if you get to a point in your adventure, your campaign, where there's a monumental battle going on, and whether that battle be a physical, like fighting battle, or it be a duel of wits, a negotiation, if it were, whatever the situation might be. There's a system in here that allows you to hyper focus in on that particular thing and play it out blow by blow, as it were. I don't want to go too fully into this video is not really meant to be a how to play kind of thing. But I've had this game for a long time, and it's one of the ones that I really, really want to master. The problem is I don't have a lot of players who want to do that. They don't want to take the time to learn a brand new system, and a system with such depth as this. I do have one friend, his name's Steven. Fantastic guy. We've been talking about doing some stuff together with this, creating our own worlds for this, and then our own world for this, and then delving into this. The great thing about this game, I think, is that because there's such a depth to the game, there's such a depth to the storytelling, and I'll go into the reason in just a minute, that this game could be played with a big group of, I don't want to say a normal group of people, 4 to 6 players. But it could also, I think, easily play just as well on a solo type level, one game master, one player. Because of the way that the rules are structured through beliefs, the game the adventures build themselves. Now, what do I mean by beliefs? When you're creating a character, the Burning Wheel uses a set of life path systems. So at the beginning of the game, you and your players, you agree on how many life paths they're going to use to create a character. The more life paths you use, the more experienced your character is, but also the older your character is. So the great thing about this game is if you wanted to play children in a setting, in a campaign, if you wanted to do a Black Cauldron, like a Lloyd Alexander type of a game, where your characters are all middle grade age children, you could do that. You could just do 1 or 2 life paths, and you could be at that perfect level of age. If you wanted to play older aging characters, you could do that. You could add 5 life paths or whatever. The standard is usually about 2 to 3, 3 to 4. And what happens is that you pick a where you are born. And what I love about this character creation is that when you're done with the character creation, and it does take a while, it does take, my first time stumbling through it took me about 2 hours. I've gotten to the point now where I think I could create a character in about an hour. But it's a series of steps and decisions that you make. Not quite as gamey as, say, Traveler, where you're simply you pick a thing in your career and then you're rolling dice to see if you succeed at that career, and that kind of games your way through the thing. In Burning Wheel, you actually get to make all the decisions. So, for instance, say I want to be born in a village. I don't want to be born in a city. I don't want to be born as a noble. I don't want to be born as a peasant. I want to be born in a village in the middle of the run. I'm not a peasant, but I'm not, super rich or born into a large city. So I pick Village Born, and it tells me how many years I spent as a child. It might be 6 years, it might be 8 years. I don't have the book open right now, so I couldn't tell you exactly. At that point, it gives you a certain set of skills, things that you would learn by living in a fantasy village. And it is a fantasy-based game in that traditional, European medieval feel. Once I've chosen that path and I've completed that step, it tells me how old I am, what kind of skills I have, any additional abilities that I might gain from being born in a village. At which point I didn't have to decide, what does my character want to be when he grows up? What is it? What am I aiming for? So let's just say at that point I decide I want to be a scribe. I want to go into some sort of like either clerical type job, or I want to do some kind of work in some sort of like as a linguist or something. So I pick scribe, and when I go into scribe, it tells me how many years I have to be a scribe in order to sort of master that skill. And so then I add that to my ability, or to my age, so it makes me a little bit older. It might be 2 years, it might be 3 years. And then all the skills I learned from that. Basically from scribe, I'm going to learn reading, I'm going to learn writing, I'm going to learn a language maybe, and a few other abilities as well. And you keep going, you keep adding those things up, and then you get these cool paths that you kind of create. And they seem very logical, and they seem very realistic as it goes along. It makes sense as your character begins to grow and becomes a full-fledged character. When you're finished, you tie up all these things, you add some skills, there's a few skills that you can sort of learn that are sort of outside of the scope of your class or your whatever you're doing. And then those are just hobbies that you have that you can kind of add to the character as well too. Cool thing about Burning Wheel, another cool thing about Burning Wheel, is that you can play a character. Like, the game is totally not... You can make it combat focused if you want to, but it doesn't have to be combat focused at all. Meaning that I could play a clerical character who has no skills with weapons whatsoever and still have a very engrossing, engaging campaign. And that's because of the beliefs that you create. Beliefs are these sort of written sentences, these little short, maybe paragraphs about your character and what it is they hope to achieve in life, the things that they're passionate about, and things that they strive for. So I could say, as a scribe, I could say, I want to become. My belief might be that I believe that, and it goes into great detail about how to write these. And again, off the top of my head, I can't come up with a good one. I believe, it doesn't have to be I believe. It's just a belief about yourself and about your future. I strive to become the greatest scribe in this kingdom. It could also be that I believe that the Duke of this kingdom, of this duchy, is corrupt, and I plan on using my abilities to bring about his downfall. There can be beliefs like that. Now, what the great thing about that is again, it just instantly creates adventures for you and the game master, which is wonderful. So you start off with just a basic idea. The game master comes up with this idea. Here's what's happening in the village right now. How does your character react to it? Okay, once that kind of flows in the motion, then the game master looks at your beliefs and goes, okay, how can I weave in the fact that the Duke is corrupt, or maybe not corrupt? Your character believes that he is, but maybe he's really not. Maybe there's something else going on. Those automatically create tension. They automatically create adventure seeds and hooks. And you can build off of those. Now, beliefs can change. If you complete a belief, you get to the end of a game, you decide whether or not you've completed a belief. If you get to the point where you realize, hey, the Duke's not corrupt anymore, or he never was corrupt, I was wrong, how can you rewrite that belief? Rewrite it in some kind of new way that's going to add more adventure ideas. I think that's the beauty of Burning Wheel. It's not to say that the Game Master has no sort of responsibilities as far as creating content, but it's easier to create content because you have sort of built-in beliefs that are already kind of creating adventure seeds and creating tension. Now, the debate between you and the Duke could be completely verbal. It could be you doing an investigation to find out if there's corruption there, and maybe even coming to a duel of wits with the Duke, and dueling it out with mere words. It's a debate between the two of you, an argument, if you will. It could be a courtroom battle kind of thing. Doesn't have to be a flashing of swords or drawing of weapons or anything. Now, you can play in that respect. You could become a soldier. You could become a city guardsman. You could become, if you do enough life paths, you could actually play as the Duke himself if you wanted to. The other great thing about this game too, and what I really enjoy about it, is that not everybody has. There's no levels in this game, other than sort of the life path, how many life paths you choose. But as you gain experience, and this they call it Artha, which is I believe, an Arabic word. But you use Artha points at the end of every session, and you can add those to sort of any skills that you've used during the game, and/or abilities. You can use Artha to sort of increase those abilities. So not being levels, but what's interesting is that I could create one character at 5 life paths and have him be sort of like the noble of, maybe he's a knight, okay, let's say he's a knight of a kingdom. I could also create, or another player could create another character who has 3 life paths, or maybe 2 life paths, and he's actually my squire. There's still enough depth and meat into this game that those two aren't going to sort of like be completely out of whack with each other. A lot of times in D20 games like D&D or Palladium or whatever, Pathfinder, any of those games, if your characters are sort of off level, there comes a point where like the lower level character he can't compete with the other characters, and thus he feels sort of left out. There's not much he can do. Not in Burning Wheel, man. There's some great abilities that can always be put to use. And it could be side quests, it could be all sorts of great things. The great thing is that, if you're playing with one person, you have adventures to build off of just their one set of beliefs. But if you have a group of characters, and I would say you probably don't want to go any higher than maybe 6, and 6 might be pushing the upper limit of players. But if you did like 2 or 3 characters, you have a whole wealth of beliefs to feed off of this thing, and you could do adventures and campaigns for years and years to come. I've seen examples of people using this to play games like Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire. I've seen examples of people using it to run a Middle-earth type campaign, although there's no rules for hobbits in here. The core book does give you rules for playing humans, dwarves, elves, and orcs. And in this book, in the Codex, you get a bunch of other ones as well too. I think there's troll in there. There's the great wolf, which is actually just a very intelligent large wolf creature. There's a few more, and I can't remember. Oh, the dark elf, which is like the sort of the fallen elf. So it wouldn't be great for like maybe third age Middle Earth role playing, but it would be really good for maybe, I don't want to say pre-Hobbit, but before the Hobbits really became an important part of the game itself. Maybe Silmarillion type of storytelling. But Burning Wheel. I don't want to make this video too long, but I just want to say this is the game that I really, this is on my bucket list to master before I kick the bucket, as it were. And it just takes time. It definitely takes time, and it takes time playing it slowly and working through things. And there might be game sessions where you're just, all right, how does this work? All right, cool. It says roll 2 dice kind of thing. But it's just one of those things where you have to kind of get through it. And once you do it a couple times, it starts to make sense. And all this stuff is very, very logical in the way it works. It just takes a little bit of time to figure out how it works out as sort of a dice mechanic, and how you can implement it into your play. And there's several levels that you can go at as well too. Not every fight has to be using the fight mechanic where it's like this long drawn out blow by blow kind of fight. You can, if you stumble upon a thug in the street and you just want to dispatch him, you make your intent, I want to kill this guy, or I want to chase this guy off, or I want to intimidate this guy. And you simply add up your abilities and you roll the dice, and then if you succeed, then you get what happens. Yes, you chase him off. He runs away, no harm done. Scene over, let's move on, kind of thing. I think this game would do very, very well for long saga-esque kind of playing descendants of different characters. But what I really like is I think it would make a very beautiful, very, very intimate, very deep-rooted sort of campaign in which that you sort of follow a character day by day doing their things, and can have some very intense role-playing moments. So my question for everybody out there is, what's the game that you have always wanted to master? What's the game that you're striving to master the most before, it's on your bucket list that you want to kind of do? So maybe a little video response. I'm going to throw this out there. what's the game that you what's a game that you already have mastered? Is it D20? Is it, you know, is it D&D? Is it Pathfinder? Is it I'm going to shoot us out to Ivan Mike and to Runeslinger? Is it you know, All for One? Is it Ubiquity System? Something like that. What's your favorite game? What game have you mastered, and what game is it that you really want to master sometime in your lifetime? So, yeah, looking for responses for that. And until next time, I'm Questwise, and we're out.